All right, let's get right into it. What we have here is a declassified dossier, and it details some of the most unsettling experiments ever conducted by the United States government. Today, we're opening the file.
And right off the bat, these files force us to ask a really uncomfortable question. What happens when a government, in the name of protecting you, decides to turn its most dangerous ideas on its own people?
So how on earth did any of this happen? To even begin to understand, you have to put yourself in the mindset of the era, the Cold War. It wasn't just about missiles and tanks. It was this all-consuming psychological battle, fought completely in the shadows.
So while everybody's attention was on the nuclear standoff and the fight against communism, there was this whole other secret war happening right under their noses. And the fear of that hidden enemy, well, that became the excuse for pretty much anything, no matter how extreme.
And this wasn't just some vague paranoia. U.S. intelligence was watching these Soviet show trials, seeing these coerced confessions, and they became genuinely convinced that the enemy had a brainwashing weapon. This panic, this desperation, it led them down a very dark path. To beat a monster, they started thinking they had to become one themselves.
And that desperate thinking, well, it leads us straight to our first case file. This is where we see the CIA's dive into one of the most infamous secret programs in American history, MKUltra.
Project MKUltra. The goal was as simple as it was terrifying. Find a way to control the human mind. Could you make someone tell the truth? Could you make them do something against their own will? That's what they wanted to find out.
And how did they test these theories? Well, this is where it gets really disturbing. They did it on unwitting American citizens. We're talking about patients in mental hospitals, prisoners, drug addicts, people who were subjected to all of this without their knowledge or their consent. This wasn't science. It was abuse, plain and simple. One of the most unbelievable examples was a subproject called Operation Midnight Climax. Seriously. The CIA set up these fake apartments in San Francisco and New York, lured unsuspecting men there, dosed them with LSD, and then just watched what happened from behind one-way mirrors. And your tax dollars paid for it.
And here's the thing, we only know about any of this because around 20,000 documents survived. See, back in 1973, when Congress started sniffing around, the CIA director ordered all the MKUltra files destroyed. So just think about that for a second. What we know is only what they failed to burn. And this secrecy had a real tragic human cost. Take Frank Olson. He was an Army biochemist, part of the program, and one day his own colleagues dosed him with LSD without telling him. 9 days later, he fell from a hotel window to his death. For over 20 years, his family was told it was a suicide. The truth only came out decades later, and it pointed to something much, much darker than a simple tragedy. It pointed to a cover-up.
But the experiments weren't just confined to individuals in secret rooms. Oh no, the next file in this dossier is somehow even more alarming. This is about how the government turned an entire American city into a giant laboratory.
Okay, so it's 1950. The Navy has a question. What would happen if an enemy sprayed a biological weapon over a coastal city? Their solution? To just do it themselves. They called it Operation Sea Spray. For 6 days straight, a Navy ship sailed up and down the coast of San Francisco, pumping out huge clouds of live bacteria into the air. That bacteria mixed with the city's famous fog and just drifted over everything, exposing almost 800,000 people. Nobody had a clue it was happening. Now, the Navy used a bacterium they thought was harmless. Well, they were tragically wrong. Right after the test, a local hospital saw this sudden, bizarre spike in really rare infections from that exact bacteria. And one man, a 75-year-old named Edward Nevin, died. His death was later linked directly to the experiment. The government's response? Decades of total silence.
And here's maybe the most shocking part. San Francisco wasn't a one-off. It was basically a trial run. Over the next couple of decades, the military conducted over 200 similar open-air biological and chemical tests over populated areas all across the country.
So, when you step back and look at these files together, you stop seeing them as isolated incidents. You start to see something else. A very clear, very undeniable pattern of behavior.
I mean, just look at this. Whether it was mind control with MKUltra, biowarfare with sea spray, or even chemical weapons tests on their own sailors in Project SHAD, the playbook is identical every single time. A secret goal, unethical methods used on unsuspecting Americans, followed by decades of denial.
So what's the big takeaway here? What connects all these dots?
It's a fundamental breakdown of ethics. It's this dangerous idea that a threat is so big that the rights of individual people just don't matter anymore, that secrecy is more important than safety, and that the truth, well, the truth can just be buried forever.
You know, looking back at all of this declassified history isn't just about being shocked at the past. It's about asking a critical question that is absolutely relevant to the present. This quote, I think, just nails it. It's the logic of crisis. When you're scared enough, or when you convince yourself the threat is big enough, the basic contract between a government and its people can be secretly torn up.
And that really leaves us with one last vital question. The Cold War is over. The Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. But did that logic, the one that says the ends always justify the means, did that ever really go away? That is the unanswered question these files leave hanging in the air.